All right, people. Friday, we talked about how both journalists and novelists were using their power of the pen to write about the struggles of everyday people, to use a novel, even though it's fiction, to write about issues that were important, the struggle of human misery. So Friday we had a reading about the jungle, some questions. You're reading it again today for your bell question, same kind of thing, and making sure that you understand how we change this idea of what it means, what literature means in the pursuit of changing and making things better for the poorest of poor and the common people. We're going to look now at another way that progressives worked to try to change society, and these were called settlement houses. We don't really have settlement houses today, but as a way to maybe kind of understand what these are, kind of like a Boys and Girls Club or a YMCA or a YWCA. And the leader of this movement was Jane Addams, and she is going to be really important. She's going to be our first female to win a Nobel Peace Prize from the United States, which is fairly significant in a time period when women weren't offered much opportunity. Most of the women that work in these settlement houses were college-educated women. They were either teachers or they were social workers and didn't really have an outlet of a way to use their college degrees. And so these settlement houses become a way for them to do that. Hers is in Chicago. It's called Hull House. Those of you that ever get to Chicago and get tired of doing the same old thing in Chicago, although I don't know why you would ever get tired of shopping in Chicago, but in case you do, you can visit the Hull House. Part of the University of Chicago, or is it Northwest? I can't remember, is built on that property. And this Hull House does quite a few things. It provides social services for the immigrants and the poor, things like classes to teach English so that immigrants are learning English, childcare, which is, again, something that we don't really think about, that is difficult for the working poor to find childcare. Hygiene, again, that is an important part, especially for some of the immigrants coming from Eastern Europe. And then really important, taught kindergarten. So we're still at a time period where we don't have any requirements for education in most states. And the idea of, again, starting an education for these children in English becomes really important. So part of that idea for children is to reduce child labor and improve school improvement. Now, I'm going to add one in here that your textbook doesn't like to add, and I don't know why, but also juvenile delinquency. It is one of the reasons why schools become what they are, is to get rid of juvenile delinquency. So what has happened is parents are at work, there isn't childcare, and we saw those pictures of the little kids on the streets. They start doing things that little groups of kids have always done since the beginning of time, being delinquents. Robbing, getting involved in criminal activity that children can usually get away with. And so what happens is the country decides, especially the people in the progressive movement, is we need to take care of children. And what is formed is the United States Children's Bureau, created in 1912, and still works today to protect children. So again, when we're talking about, and in this test, you will have things to write about, because this is an important chapter. One of the things is what's the longest, or what are the lasting legacies of this progressive era? And one of the most important lasting legacies is the protection of children. And again, I kind of talk about this in a joking kind of way, but it's the reason why you can't, if you work at Joe's or if you work at Backstreet Pizza or Bob's, why you can't use a pizza cutter. If you're under 18, you cannot use a pizza cutter. I don't think you're allowed to use a cheese grater. I don't think you're allowed, if you work like at Basler's, to use the machine to crush the cardboard because of the protection of children. And so the slow movement of education in the replace of work. And this will be where the pushback with parents will be. Parents will say, you can't make me send my kid to school. That's my kid. I get to decide. And again, that is always going to be a line for the government to decide in how much government interference can be in the lives of children. So now that we have education and we start working towards education, and again, in 1912, about 25% of the population will be graduating from high school, and that's a really very low number. So our disagreement is, how do we figure out what kind of schools we want our kids to go to? What ages do we want our kids to go to? Should they be required? And what has happened over time is 8th grade. 8th grade becomes the grade that the government. Yes. Is it social gospel? It's next. Okay. Just go. When I put those in order to make them that size, but it's social gospel is next. So states are going to pass laws that require children to attend schools to a certain age. And for the most part, that becomes 8th grade. And we have mostly our Amish and Mennonite people to thank for that 8th grade. Now, hopefully some of you had no issue like, well, then why am I going till the 12th grade? Well, you go because you want to. But what states have done has made it very difficult for you not to attend school. So if you drop out in the 8th grade, you can't get a driver's license, I think, until you're 21. They make it really difficult for you. Next disagreements are, what should schools teach? Should they teach job skills, or should they teach music and literature and this well-rounded education? And we'll go back and forth with that for a long period of time. If we were in this building in, let's say, 1950, now let's make it 1948. 1948, your requirements for graduation would be really different. For some of you, it would be awesome because you would probably only have to take and pass algebra. You would probably only had to take and pass biology, but you would have had a lot more history every 4 years. You would have had a lot more English. You would have had to take a speech class. Your vocational teaching would have been tracked differently. Girls would have taken all these classes to learn how to set a table properly, and boys would have learned how to change a tire. So we've changed education. What really changes education for math and science, for those people that were angry that you only had to do one, was a space race, was that Russia launched a satellite before we did, and we really went crazy. So all agreed that boys and girls should learn different things. That is a 100% agreement that boys and girls should learn different things. So yes, and it lasts a long time. I graduated high school in 1982. In 1981, March of my junior year, my parents finally, thankfully, divorced, and my mom had to move back to North Carolina. So I went back to my mom's high school that she graduated from, and my granny graduated from, and that half of the people I were related to in April, really, of my junior year, and found I had a whole bunch of classes I had to take. One class that I had to take that only females had to take was that class called Family Living. And in that class, just wait till you see what I had to do. In that class, the first semester, a class that I had to have to graduate was to plan a wedding. Plan a wedding. Now, some of you might think that was a lot of fun. I did not. I was enraged and incensed that I had to have this stupid class to graduate high school. What about that? And I'm talking like everything. Menu, flower girl, everything. The second part of the semester, which I could kind of get my head around, except the way that it was done, was then it was called something else, and we had guys. And the guys were there so we could do this family thing where we were married as a couple. But guess who could not have a job? Right. The guy got the job, the woman planned the house. This is 1982. Again, I got in my whole school career, I never got sent to the office. I never broke a rule. I never did anything wrong until March of my junior year. And I got sent to the office 5 times. 3 times in my U.S. history class, 3 times just from March to June, 3 times. And then 2 other times in both that wedding class and that stupid family class when I found out I couldn't have a job. I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't have a job. Well, no, you're there to make the family. Anyway, so long story short, John Dewey works on making education practical and analytical, doing education instead of memorizing. All right, and that will be where we stop for the day, and we'll pick up social gospel tomorrow. So make sure you have the jungle created. Yes.
Pretty sure I did.
Do what?
Didn't I get mine done?
I don't know, honey. I haven't looked. Anybody else have and look at their canvas very closely that if you already have like a 0 for week 4 Bell questions, I don't know what I did, and I don't know if it's just 1 or 2 of you, but you don't have a 0 for week 4 Bell questions. We haven't done them yet, so I don't know what that is, but I will try and look and see if I can find anything weird that I've posted or done, or I brought. Do what?
I feel like we did it too early.
Yeah, and maybe if I don't know. I'm really good at that.